You know, growing up, Christmas was always the highlight of our year. I can still smell Mom's sugar cookies baking in the oven, hear Dad's terrible singing while we decorated the tree, and feel that warm glow of being surrounded by people who loved you no matter what. My name is Dennis, and for 32 years I thought that unconditional love was real. I built my plumbing business from nothing, worked 14-hour days with my hands in dirty water and cramped crawl spaces, all while supporting my sister Sarah through law school. $90,000 over 3 years to be exact. I was proud to help family achieve their dreams. But sometimes the people closest to you can make you question everything you thought you knew about loyalty and respect. Before I tell you this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear more real stories about family and standing up for yourself. Trust me, you will want to stick around for how this one ends. I started working as a plumber when I was 18, learning the trade from old Tony, who ran a small shop downtown. While other kids my age were partying in college, I was crawling under houses and learning that honest work with your hands could build something real. 14 years later, I owned reliable plumbing solutions with 8 employees and steady income of $120,000 a year. I had my own house, a brand new Ford F-150, and more importantly, the respect of my community for doing quality work. My parents, Linda and Robert, were proud of what I had built. Mom would brag to her nursing friends about how I had turned a trade into a real business. Dad would show off pictures of the commercial jobs I completed, like when I redesigned the entire water system for the new downtown office complex. But it was my relationship with my sister Sarah that meant the most to me. Sarah was 4 years younger and had always been the academic star of our family. When she got accepted to State University for law school 3 years ago, she came to me with tears in her eyes. Student loans would not cover everything, and Mom and Dad were already stretched thin with their retirement planning. Without hesitation, I offered to help. $2,500 every month for tuition, books, rent, and living expenses. It was a significant chunk of my income, but seeing Sarah's face light up made every sacrifice worth it. For the first 2 years, everything seemed perfect. Sarah would call me twice a week, updating me on her classes, her grades, and her dreams of becoming a prosecutor. She would say things like, "I cannot wait to pay you back when I am making lawyer money," and "You are the best brother anyone could ask for." During family gatherings, she would proudly tell everyone how I was making her education possible. But sometime during her 3rd year, things started to change. The phone calls became less frequent, and when Sarah did come home for visits, she seemed different. More polished, I guess you could say. She started wearing expensive clothes that I knew I was not paying for, and she carried herself with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. When relatives would ask about school, she would talk about her internship opportunities and her study groups, but she stopped mentioning my support entirely. The first real warning sign came at Thanksgiving last year. I had brought my homemade cranberry sauce, a recipe I had perfected over the years, and I was excited to tell everyone about a major project I had just completed. Our crew had spent 3 weeks redesigning the plumbing system for the entire East Side shopping plaza, a job that brought in $40,000 and proved we could handle the big commercial contracts. But when I started talking about it, Sarah barely looked up from her phone. She seemed bored, even annoyed. Later that evening, when our cousin Brad arrived with his girlfriend Sarah, suddenly became animated. Brad is a doctor, and Sarah hung on every word as he described his work at the hospital. She asked thoughtful questions, laughed at his jokes, and made sure everyone knew how impressed she was with his dedication to saving lives. I felt a knot forming in my stomach, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Sarah was just stressed about school, and medical stories were probably more interesting dinner conversation than pipe installations. Still, I could not shake the feeling that something had shifted between us. The phone call that changed everything came on December 15th. Mom called me while I was replacing a water heater for Mrs. Patterson, an elderly client who always offered me coffee and homemade cookies. Mom sounded nervous, which was unusual for her. "Dennis, honey, I need to talk to you about something," she began. "Sarah called me yesterday and she is worried about Christmas dinner this year." I set down my wrench and gave her my full attention. "Worried about what, Mom?" "Well, she has been dating this young man, Andrew, and his family might be joining us. Sarah thinks maybe you could be more careful about how you talk about your work when they are around." The words hit me like a cold slap. More careful. What does that mean? Mom sighed deeply. She said you tend to get enthusiastic about plumbing projects, and Andrew's family might not understand that kind of work. They are lawyers, Dennis. Very successful ones. I stood there in Mrs. Patterson's basement, surrounded by pipes and tools, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. Mom, are you saying Sarah is embarrassed by what I do for a living? Oh no, sweetheart, I am sure that is not it. She is probably just nervous about making a good impression. You know how important this relationship is to her. But I knew exactly what it was. After we hung up, I could not focus on the water heater. My mind kept replaying all those subtle changes in Sarah's behavior, all those moments when she seemed to distance herself from me. I finished the job and drove straight home, where I sat in my truck for 20 minutes staring at my phone. Finally, I called Sarah directly. She answered on the third ring, and her voice had that professional tone she had developed lately. Dennis, I was just about to call you, she said, though something in her voice suggested otherwise. Were you? Because I just got off the phone with Mom, and she said some interesting things about Christmas dinner. There was a long pause. Look, I can explain. Andrew's father is Judge Morrison, and his family owns Morrison Blackwell and Associates. It is the biggest law firm in the city, Dennis. They have offered me an internship that could turn into a full-time position after graduation. That is great, Sarah. I am proud of you. But what does that have to do with me? Another pause, longer this time. These people come from old money, Dennis. They summer in the Hamptons and winter in Aspen. When they ask what my family does for work, and I tell them my brother is a plumber, well, it creates awkward situations. My grip tightened on the phone. Awkward situations. It is not that I am not proud of you, she said quickly, but you have to understand the world I am trying to enter. Image matters. Connections matter. And having a brother who works with his hands, it just does not fit the narrative. The way she said works with his hands, with that barely concealed disgust in her voice, made my blood boil. This was the same Sarah who used to brag about her big brother, who could fix anything, who built a business from nothing, who sacrificed his own comfort to pay for her education. Sarah, I have given you $90,000 over 3 years so you could chase this dream. Every month I write you a check for $2,500. Money that could have gone toward expanding my business, buying a bigger house, or saving for my own future. I never asked you to do that, she shot back. That was your choice, Dennis. I am grateful, but I cannot let gratitude hold back my career. 3 days later, I was grabbing coffee downtown when I spotted Sarah at a corner table in Starbucks. She was with 3 other young people, all dressed in expensive suits, all carrying leather briefcases that probably cost more than I made in a week. I recognized the type immediately: trust fund kids playing at being lawyers. I walked over to say hello, genuinely happy to see my sister, despite our conversation. But when Sarah saw me approaching, her entire demeanor changed. She looked panicked, like she had been caught doing something wrong. "Oh, hi, Dennis," she said, her voice tight with obvious discomfort. Her study group looked up expectantly, and I waited for her to introduce me. Instead, she just sat there fidgeting with her coffee cup. "Are not you going to introduce me to your friends?" I asked, trying to keep things light. "This is Dennis," she said, finally offering nothing else. One of the girls, a blonde with perfectly straight teeth, smiled politely. "Nice to meet you, Dennis." "What do you do?" I opened my mouth to answer, but Sarah jumped in quickly. "He works in construction." "So should we get back to studying for the constitutional law exam? Construction? Not plumbing, not business owner, not the person who was funding her entire education. Just construction," said in a way that clearly meant, "Let us move on to more important topics." I stood there for a moment, looking at my sister, this person I had loved and supported unconditionally, and realized I did not recognize her anymore. "Well, I will let you get back to your studying," I said. "Good luck with the exam." As I walked away, I heard one of the guys say something about townies, and everyone laughed. I did not look back to see if Sarah joined in, because I already knew the answer would break my heart. That evening, Dad called me. His voice was careful, diplomatic, the way people sound when they are about to deliver bad news gently. "Dennis, your mother and I have been talking about Christmas, and we think maybe this year we should keep things low-key. You know, small family gathering, nothing too elaborate." "Sounds fine to me, Dad. I am looking forward to it." Well, the thing is, Sarah's boyfriend will be joining us, and his parents might stop by too. Judge Morrison and his wife are well, they are used to a certain type of gathering. Sarah suggested that maybe you could tone down talking about work this year, just while they are there. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach tighten. Tone it down, how exactly? Maybe just do not get too detailed about specific jobs or anything like that. Sarah thinks it might make everyone more comfortable. Everyone. As if I was the problem. As if my honest work and legitimate pride in my accomplishments were somehow offensive to these people I had never even met. Dad, do you remember when I fixed your entire bathroom 2 years ago for free? Or when I replumbed Mom's kitchen so she could have the island she always wanted? Do you remember how proud you used to be when you told people about my business? Of course I remember, son. And we are proud. But Sarah is almost graduated, and this relationship could really open doors for her. We just want to support her future. Support her future. At the expense of respecting my present. December 22nd. I was under the Hendersons' kitchen sink, replacing a garbage disposal when my phone rang. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, and for a brief moment I hoped she was calling to apologize, to tell me she had been wrong, and that she wanted things to go back to the way they used to be. Dennis, I need to talk to you about tomorrow, she said, without preamble. Her voice was formal, businesslike, as if she were speaking to a client rather than her brother. I slid out from under the sink and sat on the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinet. What about tomorrow? Andrew will be joining us for Christmas dinner, and his parents might stop by afterward. I have been thinking about this, and I believe it would be better if you either skipped this year or maybe just came for dessert. After the main dinner, the words hung in the air like smoke. I could hear the Hendersons' television in the next room, some Christmas movie playing cheerful holiday music that suddenly felt mocking. You want me to skip Christmas dinner? With my own family. It is not that I want you to skip it, Sarah said, though her tone suggested otherwise. It is just that Andrew's family might find it awkward having someone from such a different background there. These people are lawyers, judges, business executives. They are not used to people like you, people like me. The phrase echoed in my head, each word a small explosion of hurt and rage. Sarah, what exactly do you mean by people like me? There was a pause, and I could almost hear her calculating her response. You know what I mean, Dennis. You are a plumber. These people are professionals, educated professionals. It would just be uncomfortable for everyone involved. Including you. Yes, she said simply. Including me. At least she was being honest now. No more pretense, no more gentle explanations about image and awkward situations. She was embarrassed by me, by my work, by the very existence of a brother who made his living with tools instead of law books. Sarah, I want you to think very carefully about what you are saying to me right now. I want you to remember who has been paying for your apartment, your tuition, your books, your food, your car insurance, and everything else for the past 3 years. I never asked you to pay for those things, she said, her voice rising. That was your choice, Dennis. You cannot use money to control my life or dictate who I associate with. I am not trying to control your life. I am trying to understand how someone I have loved and supported unconditionally can tell me I am not good enough to sit at my own family's dinner table. It is not about being good enough, Sarah snapped. It is about being appropriate. Andrew's father could offer me a job at the most prestigious law firm in the state. His mother sits on the board of directors for 3 major charities. These are connections that could set me up for life, Dennis. I cannot let family complications mess that up. Family complications. That is what I had become to her. Not her brother, not her supporter, not the person who had sacrificed his own dreams to fund hers. Just a complication to be managed. Fine, I said. I will not come to Christmas dinner. Really? The relief in her voice was unmistakable. Thank you, Dennis. I know this is not easy, but I am not finished, I interrupted. I will not come to Christmas dinner, and you will not receive another penny from me. Ever. The silence stretched on for nearly 30 seconds. When Sarah finally spoke, her voice was small and frightened. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. You want to be independent. You want to distance yourself from your plumber brother. Congratulations. You just got your wish. Dennis, you cannot be serious. I have rent due next week, and spring semester tuition is due in January. I need that money. Then I suggest you ask your professional friends for help. I am sure Judge Morrison would be happy to write you a check. You know he would not do that. Dennis, please, you are being ridiculous. One Christmas dinner is not worth. It is not about one dinner, Sarah. It is about 3 years of support that you now pretend never happened. It is about being treated like a dirty secret by someone I have loved unconditionally. It is about you telling me I am not good enough for your new life. I could hear her starting to cry. But for the first time in our relationship, her tears did not move me. Please, Dennis, I made a mistake. I was wrong to say those things, but you cannot just abandon me now. I am so close to graduating. You are right, I said. You were wrong. And now you get to live with the consequences of being wrong. I hung up before she could respond and immediately drove to the bank. It was almost closing time, but I made it just in time to close the joint account I had set up 3 years ago, specifically for Sarah's expenses. The account that automatically transferred $2,500 to her every month. 20 minutes later, Sarah called back. Then she called again and again. I let every call go to voicemail, and each message was more desperate than the last. She was sorry. She had made a terrible mistake. She needed me. She loved me. But it was too late for words. That evening, I sat down at my computer and wrote an email to my entire family. Mom, Dad, Aunt Margaret, Uncle Jim, Cousin Brad, even a few family friends who would be at Christmas dinner. The subject line was simple: setting the record straight. I wrote about the $90,000 I had contributed to Sarah's education. I detailed every sacrifice I had made every month I had gone without something I wanted, so she could have something she needed. I explained that I was not embarrassed by my work, and I would not allow anyone else to be embarrassed by it either. I told them that I would not be attending any family gatherings until I was treated with the respect I deserved. Then I did something that Sarah probably had not expected. I forwarded the email to Andrew Morrison using the address I found on the law firm's website. I wanted him to know exactly what kind of person he was dating, and I wanted him to understand the background Sarah was so desperate to hide. Christmas morning arrived, gray and cold. I woke up in my own house, in my own bed, and for the first time in years I had no obligations to anyone but myself. I made coffee, cooked myself a perfect medium-rare steak, and settled in to watch football. My phone rang constantly throughout the day. Mom called 6 times, Dad called 4 times. Even Aunt Margaret called, which surprised me since we rarely spoke. I did not answer any of them. Instead, I sat in my comfortable living room surrounded by the furniture I had bought with money I earned through honest work and felt something I had not experienced in months' peace. The consequences of my decision played out faster than I had expected. By New Year's Day, Sarah's carefully constructed world had begun to collapse. She called me on January 2nd, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. Dennis, please, you have to help me. I cannot pay for spring semester. The university is threatening to drop me if I do not pay by the 15th. What happened to Andrew? I asked calmly. He broke up with me, right after Christmas. His parents saw your email, and they told him I was not the kind of person they wanted in their family. They said I was dishonest about my background and that I had poor character for treating my brother badly. Imagine that. The internship is gone too. Without Andrew's family connection, Morrison, Blackwell, and Associates decided to go with another candidate. Dennis, my entire future is falling apart. No, Sarah, your entire plan is falling apart. There is a difference. She spent the next 20 minutes apologizing, promising to make things right, begging me to reconsider. She had to move back in with Mom and Dad because she could not afford her apartment. She was working part-time at a coffee shop, trying to save money for tuition, but there was no way she could earn enough in time. I learned my lesson, she kept saying. I will never be ashamed of you again. I promise. But promises from Sarah did not mean much to me anymore. You did not learn your lesson when I was paying your bills every month for 3 years. You did not learn your lesson when Mom and Dad raised us to treat family with respect. You learned your lesson when your plan backfired, and you lost everything you thought was more important than me. The rest of my family had their own reckoning to face. Mom called me the day after Christmas crying and apologizing for choosing Sarah's comfort over my feelings. Dad admitted they had made a terrible mistake and begged me to forgive them. Even Aunt Margaret reached out, saying she had always been proud of my success and was ashamed of how they had treated me. But the most surprising call came from cousin Brad. "Dennis, I owe you an apology," he said. "I have been thinking about what happened, and I realized I have been in similar situations. Do you know how many times people have made me feel like I had to downplay my background because I am the first person in our family to become a doctor? I should have understood what you were going through." These conversations helped, but they could not undo the hurt or rebuild the trust that had been broken. I accepted their apologies because I loved them, but I made it clear that things would be different going forward. I would not tolerate being treated as less than equal ever again. While my family was dealing with the aftermath of Christmas, I was discovering something unexpected. I was happier without them. Without the constant drain of supporting Sarah, I had money to invest in my business. I opened a second location in January and hired 4 more employees by March. I started volunteering at the community center, teaching basic plumbing skills to teenagers who were aging out of the foster system. These kids understood the value of honest work because they had never had the luxury of taking anything for granted. I also joined a networking group for small business owners and discovered a whole community of people who had built successful companies with their hands and their minds. These were contractors, mechanics, electricians, HVAC specialists, and other tradespeople who had turned their skills into thriving enterprises. For the first time in months, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Sarah tried to rebuild our relationship throughout the winter and spring. She would call every few weeks, updating me on her job search and her attempts to save money for school. She had abandoned her dreams of working for a prestigious firm and was instead looking at public defender positions and small practices that specialized in helping working-class clients. "I think I forgot why I wanted to be a lawyer in the first place," she told me during one conversation. "I wanted to help people, not impress them. It was progress, but it was not enough to erase what had happened between us. Trust once broken does not heal quickly or easily." Sarah would have to prove through actions, not words, that she had truly changed. By summer, I had made peace with the new reality of my family relationships. I attended Dad's birthday party in June, but I left when I felt uncomfortable. I helped Mom with a plumbing issue at her house, but I charged her my normal rate instead of doing the work for free. I was still their son and brother, but I was no longer their personal ATM or their emotional punching bag. The biggest change was in how I viewed myself. For years, I had defined my worth through other people's approval and appreciation. I had worked hard and sacrificed my own needs because I wanted to be seen as generous and loving. But I had learned that generosity without boundaries is not kindness, it is enablement, and love without respect is not healthy, it is toxic. I realized that my work was valuable not because other people approved of it, but because it made a real difference in people's lives. When Mrs. Patterson's water heater broke down in the middle of winter, I was the one who made sure she had hot water and heat. When the downtown office complex needed emergency repairs to prevent flooding, my team was there at 2 in the morning solving problems that lawyers and judges could not even understand, much less fix. There is dignity in all honest work, whether you wear a suit or coveralls, whether you work with your hands or your mind, whether you have a college degree or a trade certification. I had always known this intellectually, but Sarah's rejection had forced me to feel it emotionally and defend it actively. The last time Sarah and I spoke was in September. She had found a job as a paralegal at a small firm that handled workers' compensation cases. The pay was not great, but she was learning about the law from the ground up and helping people who reminded her of our own family. She was saving money to finish her last semester, hoping to graduate the following spring. "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness," she said, "but I want you to know that I tell everyone about my brother who owns his own business and employs 8 people. I am proud of you, Dennis, and I am sorry it took me so long to remember that." I appreciated her words, but I was no longer desperate for her approval. I had learned that my worth was not dependent on anyone else's opinion, even my sister's. "I am glad you figured it out, Sarah," I told her. "But I hope you figured it out for yourself, not for me." Looking back now, I can see that being excluded from that Christmas dinner was one of the best things that ever happened to me. It forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about my relationships and my own self-worth. It taught me that sometimes the people who claim to love you will hurt you the most, and that walking away can be an act of self-respect rather than selfishness. I learned that money cannot buy respect, and respect cannot be demanded or forced. It has to be earned through consistent actions and mutual consideration. I learned that family is supposed to support each other's dreams, not sacrifice one person's dignity for another person's ambitions. Most importantly, I learned that there is no shame in honest work regardless of what tools you use or what uniform you wear. The world needs plumbers just as much as it needs lawyers, and probably more than it needs people who are ashamed of where they came from. My business is thriving now. I have 12 employees contracts with 3 major commercial developers and a reputation for quality work that brings in referrals every week. I bought a bigger house last month, not because I needed to impress anyone, but because I wanted the space and I had earned it. I still think about Sarah sometimes, and I hope she finds happiness and success on her own terms. But I no longer define my own happiness by her approval or anyone else's. I have built my own table now where everyone is welcome regardless of what they do for a living, where honest work is celebrated and where family means supporting each other through everything. That is a Christmas dinner worth attending. Have you ever had to cut off someone you loved because they did not respect you? How did you find the strength to walk away from toxic relationships? Let me know in the comments below, and do not forget to hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real stories about standing up for yourself and finding your worth. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their honest work matters, no matter what anyone else thinks. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you value yourself the way you deserve to be valued. Remember, you teach people how to treat you, so make sure you are teaching them well.